We have been romanticizing creativeness. History has glorified struggle to be the main part of like creative making process all this while. But I see that it's quite the opposite. AI helps us to remove those friction points so that your barrier of entry is way easier, so that you can actually excel at a particular skill if you really choose to.
Yeah. Sounds simple, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Bit top of the let's
Optimization through AI and robotics, I don't think it's killing creativeness. I feel that it's eliminating the second order uh, problems that is disguised as creativeness. And I feel that we have been romanticizing creativeness and this friction that's been eliminated for quite a bit of time. And we have lots of repetitions in our life. We have been drafting in one form or the other, not just documents, but even ideas.
Hmm.
We have been delaying our decisions in one way or the other. And all of these are friction points, one or many combined. The entirety could be very well just a bad system.
So what I'm hearing is you're saying that we've been thinking about friction points and creative problem solving as a good thing, whereas you think that the system of coming up with solutions should not contain so much friction in the first place, and that's a symptom of a poor system.
I would say that what we have been thinking a good system was from actually a bad system, maybe even from us being part of the loop.
Okay, give me an example.
Consider like when you're writing a document, would you be very happy to look at, like, you have opened a Google Doc? Would you be very happy to look at that blank page for quite a bit of time? And would you call it um, consciousness friction? Or would you be happy if you have created a template for yourself and that template starts your ideation process? Or even like if you have like structured templates of different ideas already for you available, and if you
Mm.
can just pick up what you actually want to say in that creative process rather than staring at a blank document for quite a bit of time. So people traditionally call it writer's block. There are several things across different applications that are associated to such things. When you create ideas and then using those ideas, you actually create something from it. It could be a document, it could be music, it could be
Mm.
whatnot, right? Uh,
Mm.
but then at the end, you actually broadcast or distribute it. Whereas on the way first is where you usually are associated with frictions. Like there are like major frictions all across the different areas, but majorly in the ideation process, there has been lots of blocks that has been happening.
Sure.
People people usually say that that's where true creativeness comes up. I
Mm.
don't disagree. There have been lots of creations that has
Mm.
happened due to mistakes. But what I'm trying to say is that the art of creativity or creation itself is not from the initial ideation phase, right?
Mm.
It's about the aftermath of that. It's about
Okay.
how creative you get during the process.
How does this relate to AI and refining that process, either in the ideation phase or post the ideation phase?
I think it gives us the option of multiple avenues to explore. Like
Mm.
ideation, everyone knows that AI can help you ideate way faster.
Mm. I think it kind of comes down to two things, right? Like and in robotics, like you and I know this is a common concept, is explore versus exploit, right? Um, in in robotics, we use this from a physical exploration space. Is when a robot knows an area, does it choose to exploit what it knows in that area, or does it choose to explore completely new areas? I don't think this is particularly different to like a creative process, whether it's for hey, I'm trying to write a book, or I'm trying to create engineer a design solution for something, right? There's always a choice to, do I exploit the systems that I know, or do I explore completely new systems? Now, my counter argument to what you're suggesting is, the less time we spend in the explore phase of things, sure, we may get to solutions faster, but those solutions can tend towards a certain bias of existing previous solutions, right? And we're seeing that already. Like, let's say we heavily use coding assistants. There is a heavy bias towards existing solutions, right? Um, it's also why when you saw frameworks for like web development come through, web apps started all looking the same. Games, if you go back to like mobile telephone games back in like the early 2000s and stuff like that, every single game was very different, right? Every mobile phone game had a different branding, different kinds of buttons. Everything was different. By 2020, I think by 2015, 2020, they pretty much became very, very cookie cutter experiences. Like the user layout of a Sudoku game is exactly the same as the user layout of a word processing game kind of thing, right? So I guess there's two layers of creativity, right? Are you trying to solve a functional problem in a creative manner, or are you trying to do something artistically creative? And I think these are two different things, right? And separating that in my mind is quite helpful. I actually don't think that it necessarily helps to speed up that ideation phase, particularly within like an artistic standpoint, right? From an artistic standpoint, I want to spend as much time in that exploration phase as possible. I ground myself. I'll take my own music as an example, right? I'll ground myself in a certain structure for compositions and things like that. But then I will spend a lot of time ideating on where I can possibly go with that. So the structure does assist going back to an ideation phase, because you give yourself certain limits. Now, if I were to say I want to do a 2-hour concert with absolutely no limits whatsoever, that's actually very hard to do if I don't already have a structure for that concert. So that there is a way, yeah, you're right, where template.
When do you get the structure or templates? Traditionally, we didn't have these AI tools, or we didn't have access to tools other than ourselves.
Sure.
Most of the uh, creators back in mid ages didn't have tools extensively like this.
I don't think that's true. I think they always had frameworks to think of these things, right? Like
Yeah.
concert formats, for example. If you look at Western classical music, the structure of a like a symphony, it has
Oh
a
no, no,
breakdown of parts within
those
it,
have been
right?
available. I was talking about the creative process to attain that structure for yourself, rather than like you've been telling that
Mm.
we have
But that
templates.
it's the same
Yeah.
thing, right? So
Hmm.
like if I have a composition and I know that there is a structure of, say, introduction verse, like a secondary verse, then a chorus, then a verse, then a chorus. That is a structure within which I apply my
Hmm.
exploration of how I can structure it, right? We know that there are certain limitations on like rhythmic patterns and things like that. Those are the frameworks that already exist that you use in order to create within it, right? It's a little bit
Yep.
tougher, say, in written medium. Let's say we're talking about writing a book, right? Because most people, you just start writing and you don't know how to break it up into chapters and flows and scenes and things like that, right? But even
Yep.
within like visual media, there's always been structure like that, right? Like
Yep.
you look at painters and artists and they talk about salient lines. They look at, color theory. These aren't new concepts. So those structures have always existed. Um, so I don't think that's well, where AI really helps that, right? And I'll kind of come over to your side for a second. Where AI really helps that is it gives us access to those structures without the years of expertise it takes to learn those structures, right?
Yeah.
And that's a really good thing. Like I if I want to create some kind of poster or some kind of artwork and I want it to have a certain effect for my business, it makes it easy for me to think about structure when I don't have to learn about it. When I have some kind of AI assistance to help me say, Here are some suggested
That's
structures.
where I promote creativity. I guess I accept that the fact that we need
Mm,
structures and sort of like these guiding frameworks to establish what we want to say. But those are essentially the boring stuff and the
mm,
mundane stuff. Those have been done for you. And if I'm totally new, I consider myself totally alien to music. And if I want to bring my creativity
yeah.
from a different background, from my experiences into music, into a format that I have no experience at all, I'd
Mm,
say that with this age, with technology, AI and robotics, whatnot, um, it helps me to do it. Of not considering the friction points that we have considered it to like uh, say that creativity has stemmed from, and to directly go into ideation, design thinking from how I can bring in my own ideas into this structure and
mm,
align it properly. And I also learn during this process in terms of how I can fit my ideas, my experiences, my
yeah.
my sort of offering to this particular field.
Yeah. But I think the difference that it makes is the difference between access and excellence, right? So bear with me. The having like automated systems helps um essentially lower the barrier of entry to access those frameworks to get to a certain level of quality that previously took a lot of experience and learning and expertise in a specific field, right? Like I'll say this for myself, right? Like video, not really my thing. Photo, not nearly as much my thing compared to audio, right? Like, but I spent years looking at audio and sound, and that makes sense to me. However, the flip side of that coin is excellence, where like a lot of these tools can help me bring up my photo and video skills to like a baseline. Um, I still don't think that I would be a match for someone who has a lot of excellence in those fields,
Okay.
right? Where they can use this to speed up the initial part. But it's still that friction of how can I be different? How can I do that extra something special, right? Wrong.
But the question is, would you have to be, or would you have to reach the excellent stage? You can be creative and you could just be an indie artist, right?
Sure, I disagree with that. Everybody's an indie artist. All artists are indie artists by nature, right? Like
Yeah.
that's just the def.
That's the power of AI and the abilities that it gives anyone to voice out in terms of
Yeah,
if they don't have offerings. They have lots of indie artists nowadays,
yeah,
and probably their voice or their art is more it's better than most of the global brands, and it's received way better nowadays compared to how it was previously because of toolings like this. If I'm an indie
really.
artist and I didn't know how distribution works or like who to reach
Sure.
to
Yes.
for such things. And if
Yes.
I'm an indie artist and I didn't know about content creation,
Yes.
if I do just music, but now I've started content creation and started structuring my music into like a narrative and then started posting daily, and then my reach is suddenly like enormous.
Mm,
And you don't have to
mm.
be an excellent content creator, just need to like hit the right bills.
I see what you mean there, right? Like I do agree that access level, and this is what I'm saying. The access level has been
Yeah.
essentially reduced and improved so that more people can have that, right? So, are we seeing a net increase in total number of people participating in creative processes and creative outlets? Yes. I think that's categorically true, right? Like, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, anything, you're seeing that, right? However, I don't think that really changes when you're talking about excellence within a specific field. That's still it gives you that baseline entry point, but then that excellence to go be the next, David Garrett or Hilary Hahn when it comes to like playing violin, for example. It may have made things easier for more violin influencers to come in and put their art out there and be better known, much, much better known than they ever would have had a chance like years ago, right? Um, Take Two Set Violin, for example. They're Australian creators. They're two fantastic young violinists. And they've been making content for 15 years or so, right? YouTube videos, skits. They've just built a community around classical music and particularly the violin. Now, that gives them access, right? And to be fair, those guys have a significant degree of excellence, right? That they have used that boost of access to give them to build upon on top of, right? Like, so they needed kind of both things. They needed the platforms like YouTube to give them that access and visibility. We may never have heard of Two Set Violin, sadly, despite their excellence. So there's this kind of counterintuitive thing there where previously creatives, it wasn't about people needing that excellence and that struggle in order to get popular. Some of the like most technically skilled artists, right? Like I'll,
That's a
I'll
good
speak from a
point.
Carnatic music standpoint, right? Incredible artists, never heard of them. People have never heard of them purely because they didn't have access to the platforms. In Chennai, they didn't have the access to the sabhas and places where they can go and deliver a concert properly. Because there are limitations in certain communities where can you get access to a stage? Who do you know? It's like getting a job these days. So much of it is who you know as much as what you know, right? It's not as meritocratic within the creative community. And this isn't just an India thing. You see it in US, you see it in the UK, right? You see it in Hollywood. It's not necessarily a meritocracy from a creative talent standpoint, right?
Yeah. We have been associating like
Mm,
friction and struggle to be part of the creation making process all this time. Like history has glorified struggle to be the main part of like creative making process all this while. But I see that it's quite the opposite. We have had struggle, we have had friction. Um,
yeah.
I know like we have made many different like artists around that using or leveraging that.
Mm,
But I
mm.
feel that we'll be making countless more artists, even though they, as you said, like don't reach excellent state, but they can voice out their own individualistic creative process if we start removing the friction and the struggle aspect of it.
Sure, but I think it depends on what areas are you removing the friction from, right? Am I
Hmm.
removing the friction from technical skills like, oh, do I know how to host my own video, right? Like, for example, would this podcast exist without Riverside, as an example, right? Like, yes, it probably would, but the effort that we'd have to go to set up videos, audio, syncing that stuff. So this,
Yeah, that's the friction point that I've been talking about. Any friction during this process, any
hmm,
friction at all.
you can't put the two things in the same category, right?
Mm,
Because there's a different kind of friction. The friction that we glorify in within a creative standpoint, actually, even that is two kinds of frictions. So there's three kinds of frictions, right? There's systemic access and platform. Let me call them platform frictions, right? That's the systems that we need to work within, the technical skills that we need to do that are not directly related to your skill in an art form,
mm,
but related to how you can deliver that output, right? That's one type of skill. That is having access to YouTube, having access to recording tools, having easy access to podcast equipment. Now, like everybody's able to get a mixer and get an auto EQ of their voice kind of thing. Brings that level of, you don't need as much sound engineering expertise to run your own YouTube channel, for example, right? Um, that's one kind of friction. Let's call that platform friction. The second kind of friction is skill friction, right? Now, and that for me is, as a musician, if I am not practicing to the edge of my ability, right? If I'm not practicing in the spaces where I see friction within my skill set, right? I may be really good at like this one particular jazz song, but I may be really bad in a song where I've got a lot of bass range that I need to explore, for example, right? So do I need to work on my voice in that bass range? In that friction area, do I need to go work out? It's like an athlete, right? Like you look at the Indian cricket team in the early 2000s, right? Most of them had a fitness issue. You look at the team of 2003 and you look at the team of 2023, chalk and cheese, right? So do they get better by focusing on that friction point, the bit where they're genuinely like lacking? Yes, absolutely. This is where I see the detriment of.
if you truly want to hone on in terms of the
Mm,
skill set or reach that excellent state, any any sort of automation can't match that. And I
yes,
take this flip side and I agree with you immediately because I know that can't be done. If you want to really excel at a particular skill, then yeah, you should start excelling at it by like defining what you need to.
Correct. And we're seeing exactly the same thing, right? Is let's take software engineering, right? It's interesting. I've been talking to a few people recently where the mindset is that you're no longer a machine learning engineer, you're no longer like a robotic software engineer. We're all full stack engineers now when we're powered up by an AI tooling set with the speciality in a specific area where you have some domain expertise, you have some specific experiential expertise that you really worked on. So that platform friction of having access to say, oh, I want to build a React web app, I want to build a front end that's built for PC, I want to build, you know, the platform friction is reduced by AI tooling. And I think I agree with you, that's a really good thing. But I don't think we can fully rely only on that and not on that um, excellence bracket, right? And that friction of going through delivering solutions and repeating things. There was a study a while ago. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like it was a photography kind of course, and half of the class were told you're only allowed to make one submission for the whole year. You're allowed to take one photo, but you can take the whole year to plan it out, or the whole term, or whatever it was. And the other half of the cohort were told you are allowed to take as many photos as you can, but again, only one submission. And it wasn't even a competition. The cohort that were taking many, many, many photos every single day, their rate of improvement was so much better that by the end of the year, it doesn't matter how much planning the people in the one shot cohort did, the rate of improvement improved the quality, and that came from an excellence standpoint. And those little things that like we call unknown knowns, right, or unconscious knowledge, where we've just learned a certain behavior because it makes sense. We can't explain it. We don't necessarily consciously do it anymore, but it's just part of the habit, right? So that kind of thing, uh, that comes down to genuine like creative excellence, right? The third side, which I think only applies to fine art, like I said, there are three layers, right? The platform friction, the excellence, the skill set friction, and then the third side is like an emotional friction, right? And this is where we do glorify it a little bit, is the struggling artist, right? An artist who has genuinely gone through difficult things in life is able to express things in a more like emotive manner that can connect with people, right? It's why songs about unrequited love are much more like easy to connect with emotionally than, hey, we're in a happy relationship kind of thing, right? It's why there's conflict in cinema, right? Uh, So there is always that element of like emotional friction. And I think when it comes to the field of creative art forms, I think that can be a valuable asset. I don't think that's a necessary asset, but it seems to be a valuable asset in terms of connecting with people.
Mhm.
Um, does that have a place in technical solution finding? Honestly, I don't think so. Like we see it all the time, like
Yeah.
ego-driven development, but I don't think it really has a place in good engineering. Um, well, if we want to continuously disrupt the nature of our workforces, and we've seen that more and more in probably the last 50 years than any period prior to history in that, right? And we keep disrupting the way in which work is done. We went from industrial, like everyone's in a workshop kind of thing in the late 50s, 60s, even early 70s, to a point. And then we suddenly went to, oh, okay, 80s and 90s, you've got more computer work, you've got more processing and office work, more white collar work thrown in there, right? But that disruption came with technology, but also it shifted the balance on what kind of skill sets were valued. We saw the same thing, internet era. We saw the same thing again with, more as a software, SaaS world of things. And now we're seeing the same thing again with AI coming into it and with mobile robotics as well. Um, I look, here's a controversial take from me is I think yes, technology is going to be adopted when it comes out. It doesn't matter. Like we can't like hold back technology from
Bypass
being
it. Yeah.
it's just not going to work. There's too much freedom in the world, too much liberty in the world for people to be able to do that. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, right? we shouldn't be curtailing progress that much just because we're not ready for this. However, it means that some of our old systems, we really need to rethink them from scratch, right? The concept that we spend, what, 23 years on average now on education before we do a day of work in a field that within 5 years is going to be significantly disrupted is wild to me, right?
Sadly, I don't think that's going to change. But yeah,
I know. But I
yeah,
think this is where AI does actually help. And I'm going to take the full angel take of this, right? I'm going to completely switch sides. Is that's the shortcut and friction that we no longer necessarily need to know,
yeah,
right? If we can eliminate that and kind of jump forward, right? And like imagine playing a game of Pokemon, right? When you have so someone's trained up a, a Charizard to level 100 and they just give that to you at the start of the game and it works for you. Great. Excellent. You're going to find the game really easy all of a sudden, right? You eliminate areas of grind that's valuable. The There are going to be side effects, but I actually think that that's a good thing in terms of we really need to start thinking, how do we shorten the initial education phase to get to a job? And then how do we then do kind of like vocational training throughout your life, throughout your career? Let's say you've studied until you're maybe 18, you've worked say 10 years, then maybe at like 28 you do another bit of training to completely change because the world has changed, the technology has changed in 5 to 8 years. Because that's the cycle we're seeing. 10 years now, technology is totally different, right? Like uh,
yeah.
then when you're late 20s, late 30s, you might do another vocational training, completely change because the world has changed, the career has changed, and this is how we've kept it up.
Weirdly, with that Pokemon analogy,
Yeah.
I kind of was thinking Pokedex to be AI.
Ah, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Whereas if you're not given that, you just wander into wilderness and trying to identify how to become a trainer and which Pokemons to catch, which kind of types to catch
Mm-mm.
to master different gyms. Whereas if you're
Mm.
given a Pokedex, you can immediately start looking at Pokemons, what kind of team that you want to build in
Yes.
terms of which gyms you want to beat, which
Yes.
part do you want to actually master.
Yep.
I think that's
You
kind of
know, you
beautiful.
know, you know what? It's actually a very nice little contained experiment kind of world to think about it in.
Mhm.
Oh.
I'd probably like to end on this very happy note, and in terms of very good conversation that we had around how we think creativity plays with struggle or not. And we obviously took different styles in terms of supporting it and not supporting it. But I think we've landed into sort of a good conclusion where we said that experience is must if you want to really excel at a particular thing, and that experience could be associated with friction points
Mm,
while we're doing it.
mm.
And AI helps us to remove those friction points so that your barrier of entry is way easier, so that you can actually excel at a particular skill if you really choose to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be a
In life,
generalist.
it's about how do we reduce that platform friction and make things more accessible to everybody so that they have the freedom to express their excellence and extend their expertise.
Yeah, awesome.
Sounds
Neatly
simple,
put.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
Bit tougher than it looks.
Cool.
Alrighty, man.
Nice talking to you,
Let's go
man.
chat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ciao.
Thanks.